Hey, welcome back to Four for the Road, everybody. Little twisticle. This is your host, No Shame, not punk
What's
rock, but
good?
punk rock's here too, as well as
Yo,
Road Dirt
yo.
and our good friend Macc Blacc. And today we are going to be having a little episode talking about kind of the space that the MC community is in now, and really how that relates to protocol and whether or not it's relevant still, and why we might be seeing more or less variations and violations of said protocol. So with that being said, let's kick it off. Anybody got any first words? Any news breaks?
I just have last words.
Last words? Okay,
That's,
well we'll save you to
just,
the end then.
yeah, I just have last words. So, I
I
mean,
guess
we want to talk about like the state of the community, right? And like big things that are going on, like major protocol violations, and is protocol even relevant anymore? I would argue
yeah, and I
yes.
guess for some people that like I think one of the big things is that people get protocol confused a lot. Like certain things get labeled as protocol when they maybe aren't labeled as protocol. So, I guess first, like, what are some examples of things that are universal protocols in nature, and then maybe some things that are more regionally based?
I mean, I'm not really going to speak on like regionally based, right? Like stuff like that I've experienced. But I will say that like general protocol, like the foundational protocol, is what I like to call it. I will say that that's just all rooted in respect, right? That's, I'm going to take my glove off before I shake your hand. I'm going to take my glasses off and look you in the eye when I'm speaking to you. Um, I'm not going to be blowing smoke in your face and stuff like that. That's protocol, right? Like we teach that, and I think that's a failure on these men's fathers, really, or the men in their lives that are bringing them up, their father figures, because that's all shit that you should learn as a young man coming up, in my opinion. Um, as far as like regional stuff goes, all I'll say on that is that yeah, there's vast differences between regions. Um, even in like in larger clubs, you're gonna see them operate differently, and you can tell when there's an out of towner, visiting his brothers in another state or another region, whatever. One, by the license plate, obviously, but two, it's just like you'll see him before something happens, or like just as something happened, he'll like lean over to somebody and be like, "Is that how y'all do it here? Is that cool? Because that wouldn't fly where I'm from." And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just a geographic thing, right? Um, I think before I get too much farther down on that, I'm going to go ahead and stop it there. Fuck you, Mac. I see that.
Max, so since punk rock already calls you out, what are and he mentioned introductions, taking your gloves off, taking your sunglasses off, things like that. General gentlemanly things to do. What are some other protocols that are kind of universal and maybe more centered towards the motorcycle community? Because I know like when you're talking about like introductions, that whole taking your glove off thing, that was taught to me when I was in the army. That wasn't something that I needed to be taught in in the MC world, just because like Ken was saying, it's like it's kind of part of being a man and just being respectful and things of that nature. Are there any universal protocols that are very specific in universal to the MC community?
So I know for me, all the stuff Ken said is very true. Learned it in the military even before I was in the MC world. But as far as like when you go to another club's event, you're to try as much as possible not to shit on their event. You know, there's a time and place for everything, and it seems on uh, it seems around in my region now that that's no longer holds true. You know, I think there's just certain things that are off limits. You see a group of people that are attending a funeral for their fallen brother, and you're not good with them. They're at a funeral. That's off limits. And when you act otherwise and you start doing things unpolitically with them while they're there for a funeral. It just makes your club look like a piece of shit.
Yeah, there's definitely that sense of like there used to be a code of honor in the sense that like certain things were off limits. You know, we're talking about like families, jobs, things of that nature. Like if we wanted as two individuals or two clubs that didn't get along, there was a time where we could have just pulled over on the side of the road, thrown some fists around and called it a day. You know, had a nice little scrap and then that was it. And then now it seems like it's getting to a point where things start to take a turn more towards like this gang banging, even like gangster type, mentality of like nothing is off limits. And it's funny to me because you get all these people saying like, oh, all these guys pushing protocol, it's bullshit. Like when when you actually look at it, it's like, hey, what are all the things keeping people like safe and alive? That's protocol. That's what it's for, is to reduce the instances of people causing offense and reduce the instances of people, you know, acting out of pocket to cause an issue when there doesn't need to be one.
I agree with that 1,000%, man. And I think the people that have this view that protocol, whether it's regional or foundational protocol, is like, ways of the past, or it's totalitarian, and it's only good for people in this type of club but not other clubs and stuff like that. To me, I don't feel that those guys even need to just be in the club community, in any fashion, right? Because at the end of the day, those are the building blocks upon which every club should be built on, right? Now there are some clubs out there. I will say this: there are some clubs out there that don't follow protocol, but are some of the most respectful and nicest guys you'll ever fucking meet. That they'll do something that violates protocol, somebody might take as a sign of disrespect, but they're real receptive of, hey man, you just did this. Like you could just talk to them. You know what I mean? Instead of it having to be a show or fucking escalate past the conversation, it could just be like, hey man, like you did this. I'm not okay with that. I took that disrespect, and this is why I took it that way. It'd probably be great if you just never ever did that again. And I think a lot of these guys, you'll see it more in smaller like mom and pop clubs, are really receptive to that. They're like, hey man, thank you for that. Cool, blah blah blah. They run it, and then they might have like that one thing that they follow when it comes to protocol, but not necessarily dedicating their lives to the life. And I think maybe that's why they don't care much for protocol.
Yeah. So what I was thinking was, when you were talking about like protocol, we started off talking about the manners protocol, like the stuff we were taught wherever you were taught, whether it was at home, your homeschooling, or the military. Take your glove off when you shake a hand, look a man in the eye. That's good manners, right? And then you have the protocol that's set up to curb violence and unnecessary beefs. Two different things, still kind of couched under the same rules. What I will say, it seems like some clubs seem to be turning away from tradition and protocol now, and I don't know exactly what the reason is. I don't know if it's a generational thing to where, or if it's a culture thing where society now is like looks at things differently. But like you were saying, not going to someone's job or home kind of has been a code of honor for years. It's not uncommon now to someone say, I'll show up at your house and kick your door in and drag you out by your neck. And it's like, where'd we get lost, and where'd we get away from, I'm not going to bring heat to your home. I'm not going to bring heat to your job. And that's just what we do. But I notice people are turning away from it. And I can't say exactly where. I have some ideals, but I can't say exactly where that has changed or why people are turning away from it. Because it's not just young men, it's older men too that do it. The whole purpose of protocol is, like I said, to curb misunderstandings and potential conflicts and violence. Oh, and it also, another byproduct of protocol has been quality control. because, the protocol to establish a new club in your area was, and then we'll make a list A through Z, whatever it is, because it varies from region to region, club to club. But to start a new club in your region, here's a checklist of things you have to accomplish. Well, that weeded out the people who were kind of weak at heart, not serious, not interested, because if they found out they had to first go meet somebody, introduce themselves, go into t-shirts, go, a 6 month to a year long process to become established and accepted in the community. That was quality control, because that weeded out the people who weren't serious. And people don't want to do that today for a few reasons. You hear people say protocol is control. They're like, we don't, all that control or all that protocol, you're just trying to keep us down. You're trying to regulate and bully people. When all reality, it is control, but it's a measure of control that is good for the community. Because once again, like we said, protocol, whether it's how we set up our patches or the colors we wear or whose schedules we follow or just all these things, how we start new clubs, where we move, that stopped needless conflicts, that stopped needless confusion. And we know those things do lead to violence. So even though people see protocol as a way of controlling them, and so they don't want to adhere so they can do their own thing, in all reality, it's just something it's a control measure that's set up to keep things safe. And I'll stop that by saying, we don't need more beefs on the set, and we sure don't need more bullshit clubs. So yeah, I think one of the questions you asked, was protocol still needed? And I would say yes.
And I would agree with you, Bro Dirt, because for the longest time, in my experience, we were known as the Black T-shirt gang, because until we completed the steps that were given to do what we needed to do to become who we were, that's all we wore. Guys made jokes about it, this and that, but at the end of the day, it showed everybody that we were serious to our commitment, that we weren't just trying to chase a patch. We didn't have to have instant patches on our back. We just rode around black t-shirts just to show that, hey, this is our solidarity with each other. And until it's time for that, this is what we're going to do.
One of the things that you were talking about was the whole aspect of control, and when people talk about it in a sense of control, I think there's a confusion that there is in that, like, people are trying to control what a club does with its inner workings, when really, like, when we're having a conversation about protocol, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a community, and like one of the last bastions of, you can call it toxic masculinity if you want to. I'll wear that toxic badge with pride if that's what we got to throw onto it. I was talking to our good friend Tragic the other day about this. It's completely unrelated to the MC world, but the way he was talking to me about it is how he drew this connection. There was this doctor that was speaking on how cultures of manliness get developed, and that when times are easy, there's certain parts of your DNA that don't get triggered and activated. Compare it to like a piglet. Like you take a pig that's like pink and cute with its bald with its little nose, like squeaking around and shit. But you take that same animal and you put it in a stressful environment. Well, that pig turns into a wild boar, and it grows tusks and it gets fur and becomes like this beast, right? And that's kind of like the way the MC community is. It's one of those last places, and maybe part of it is because there's such a huge veteran population, people that were exposed to like these high stresses and triggered those things that make men. There's just like that visceral base alpha kind of personality, right? So whether or not you call it protocol, whether or not you call it manners, whether or not you want to believe in it or you don't want to believe in it, when you enter into this world, you become subject to it because you're going to be held accountable to your own actions. So when we call it something like protocol, and we if we want to list these things on a piece of paper and kind of understand them as universal truths, then they're just there specifically to guide people who may not have had experience in those specific things, because their expectations of courtesy, their expectations of manners, their expectations of chivalry in general. And if you something as stupid as like don't park in front of somebody else's clubhouse, if you don't like if you see all Harleys of that same club parked in front of their clubhouse, don't park in front of there. Somebody might take offense to that. So if you just do that universal blanket across the fucking board, if you just hold that, and it might not even apply to your area, but if you go everywhere and apply every protocol, you'll be fine. But if you start trying to pick and choose like which ones you're going to do, eventually you're going to run into that person that doesn't fuck around with that shit. That takes that as a sign of offense. And you can deal with that, and you can think you're a Billy badass if you want to, but I don't think that's what this community is about. I think this community is about coming together under a common love for the motorcycle and a common love for brotherhood in an effort to push each other forward. So why would you even want to cause offense just because you think you're a badass and you can handle it and nobody's going to tell me what to do, and all those like cliche statements that people like to make.
I like that piglet versus the feral hog analogy, because that's what it is when they go feral and they turn wild. But and that led me to think about something. It's like it's like the guys who want to be one percenters or outlaw motorcycle clubs or just a motorcycle club because it gives the image they're seen as being edgy and dangerous, right? Because it does, right? Being an MC, a 1%, or an outlaw, it has an image of edginess and danger. And we like that. Now, if you don't say you don't like it, you're probably lying, because, that's part of I always say the reason I want to be an MC because it's cool. I like it. But the reason that it's considered edgy, seen as edgy and dangerous, is because of the sacrifices and the levels of commitment that these men have had for decades in this community. These other clubs that are just, when I say other clubs, I mean the clubs that just don't want to follow protocol. They want to emulate something they don't really even understand. They don't realize the level of sacrifice that has been put into this thing. Whether it's the fact that, is when we that are considered to be an outlaw motorcycle club go to some states and we have a legal concealed carry, even though we have a legal concealed carry permit, if the law pulls us over, they'll give us a felony because they're considered us to be a gang. And now they're not really even, it's illegal, but they do it. And we have to deal with that. That's a level we're understand the level of scrutiny we're under. We deal with that. The men before us who have fought and fought and fought to make sure that our patch could, when it was trying to be run off the street or whatever. The fact that you can be fired from your job because of your association with your motorcycle club. We all accept those risks and we accept that environment and we commit to that level. And we've been at it for years, and our nations have been at it for decades. And then you have this guy who doesn't want to follow protocol. He just wants to throw on a patch, a 1% diamond or whatever, so he can look edgy and cool. He's still that piglet who hasn't become the feral hog. He hasn't had to deal. He hasn't grown into that. And I like that when you said that. And they're playing two sides of the fence. They want to be seen as this edgy and cool guy who's taking all these risks and is really dedicated and loyal to the set and making these sacrifices, but they're not really, because they just throw the stuff on and it doesn't really even mean anything. But yet they're offended when we tell them that we don't recognize a club or don't recognize them as whatever. They seem offended that that's just people trying to bully them and or control them. But yeah, that's what that piglet and feral hog analogy made me think of. I just wanted to throw that out there.
So let me ask you this though, Road Dirt. On the other side of the coin, right? Is let's say I make the Go Fast MC, right? And I decide I'm going to be a 1% club, and I throw a diamond on, and you catch me, riding around, whatever. You try to educate me. I say, hey man, I appreciate it, cool, but I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And I'm tested, and I come out on the other side. Not always winning, but I come out on the other side. At what point, though, does that go from being a bullshit MC to a legitimate MC?
You know, that's a good question, and you're not wrong, but it's not wrong and it's not right, because there's a couple things going on here. If they would have done that 20 years ago, with the scrutiny now that is on the community, if I walk outside my house and blink wrong, you know, all of a sudden there's gang enhancements and all this stuff that will drive me to prison for the rest of my life just because of the patch I wear. That's the reality, the level of scrutiny we're under. 20 or 30 years ago, if punk rock showed up with his go fast patches and his diamond and I beat the brakes off of you because you were disrespecting me, my brothers in the set, and every time I saw you, I beat the brakes off of you, you're probably going to quit wearing that patch eventually. I'm just sorry. It's probably, you're not going to, when every club out here is doing it, you probably wouldn't have withstood the pressure. And if you did, if you fought and withstood it, which many of our nations have for 50 years, then they become a tried and true club. But for one, I would say there's 50 other clubs out there that have already become established. Why start a Go Fast club? But secondly, I would say, so nowadays, most people aren't going to waste their time and go out there and do something stupid. I'm not going to waste my energy on a bullshit club who doesn't want to follow protocol and doesn't want to participate properly in my community. I'll just shun you and turn my back on you. But to run out there and beat the brakes off of you because you're being an asshole, it's not as common today as it was in the past, because there's video cameras everywhere, there's surveillance everywhere, there's new gang enhancements. So yeah, you might just catch a pass, right? Because no one wants to catch all these stupid charges and go to prison for life for trying to educate you, but you're still a bullshit club. We're just not paying you any attention. So, okay, 10 years from now, we'll say, hey, there's that club. The guys at Nobi, there's that club that threw some patches on. They're still here. There are a bunch of jerks back then. There are a bunch of jerks now. And the guys who don't know will be like, oh, cool, look at those one percenters. You're still a fucking bullshit club who did shit the wrong way and don't have acknowledgement from the people that matter. I mean, that's how I see it. So I see what you're saying, but in today's day and age, why would you even throw a diamond on when there's, just start up a club? There's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. The way you just described to me is the wrong way to do it. You weren't affiliated. You didn't go through a process. You didn't, I'll use Macc as an example. I don't think he'll mind. He's recently done something like that, but there's a lot of years behind what he did and why he did it. And there's history behind it with other people. I'm not going to tell his story. But what you explained, punk rock, almost sounded more like just kind of popping up and throwing it on because you wanted to. And that's why I said what I said.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I just because I think I'm known as a pretty big supporter of, you're not going to bring anything new to the table, to the MC community, right? So why start a new club? No matter what your mission is for your new club, there's a club out there that does it, and there's a club out there that does it Monday to Sunday. You know what I mean? And not, I think a lot of the newer clubs that aren't doing it right, that are refusing to take guidance and education, those are just the guys that want to look cool. But I mean, but also on the other hand, though, there are still a lot of new clubs out there that do pop up, but they're willing to take guidance. Somebody pull them aside and be like, hey man, you didn't really do this right. You're not bad dudes. You just did this back asswards, so like, let me help you kind of correct your discrepancies here. I watched that happen a couple times in San Diego. There's a couple of clubs popped up and everybody just kind of fucking stayed away from them until we saw certain people hanging out with them. And, and then it's just like, hey, what's going on there? Like, hey dude, like, we're just trying to teach them the ropes, trying to teach them how to do it properly. And, fuck man, now they're a widely accepted club in San Diego. I mean, it took years, plural, but it's possible.
To your point, punk rock, years ago when clubs would do shit like that, you could starve them out. Everybody knew not to associate with them, not to fellowship, break bread with them. Now everybody, if they see that new club, they see that new diamond, They want to run up, take a picture with them, post it on social media, try to, get their own validation for being cool with them. And we've lost that. Used to, like, hey, that club is bullshit. Everybody recognizes it. You just starve them out and they fade away. They don't do that anymore.
I think it really depends on how tight you keep your community, and then that really falls on, like, people talk about, like, if I'm a one percenter, it just means I'm just gonna, like, run around here and do whatever I want and live like this free outlaw lifestyle and just be like on the fringes of society. And yeah, cool. That sounds real fancy, and it sounds real romantic. But the whole premise behind that is part of the reason that some of the areas are acting, and are a reflection of what Mac's kind of talking about. Because then you got other areas where the 1% presence is very involved in the community, and then not necessarily even in a way where it's like hard line regulation of the community, more like guiding and mentoring and bringing different clubs together and whatnot. And if you can keep that tight knit feeling amongst the clubs in your area to where everybody's on the same page and everybody is getting equal equity out of all the work that's put into the community, then you can kind of keep these like bullshit clubs on the outskirts, and when it comes to the situation you were talking about, Ken, it's like, what were you saying? Like, they go through, like, they make it out on the other side, so many times. Like, how many times do they have to get checked and, like, turn it down before they get recognized? And I think a big part of that, and it could kind of go both ways. So this might get a little long-winded. That if they're never going to accept the criticism and they're never going to accept the education, then why would the community ever accept them? You're asking to be accepted or to join or participate in a community that has a joint set of values and a joint set of ideas of how things should be moving. And if you're going against that, why would you expect them to let you in? Like, I wouldn't go to 4-H and be like, hey, I fucking hate horses, so I'm just gonna ride my dirt bike here. Is that cool? And, like, how many times are you guys gonna tell me I can't ride my dirt bike before I'm a 4-H member? Like, you understand what I'm getting at there? It's like, if you're trying so hard not to fit in, like, you can't never expect to fit in, right? But then at the same time, it's how are the one percenters or the dominants or the existing clubs in the areas, how are they approaching this new club? Because, like you gave with your example in San Diego, all of a sudden they see these guys and they're like hanging out with somebody who means something. Well, they must have had a difference in their approach that made these people say, okay, maybe there is something I can learn. Maybe this isn't what I thought it was. So there's a little bit on both sides. What is that club that doesn't know anything doing, and what are we doing to make sure that they actually know something so that they can't use ignorance as an excuse anymore?
And again, just to be clear, because I know that there's going to be, there's people on both sides of the fence that listen. It's just like, oh, well, I'm either a new club, or, they're on the other side of the fence of, hey, like, I've been around, we've had to pay our dues, we did it the right way. What the fuck? Now this asshole just shows up, like, and I get it. I just wanted to make sure we get both sides of that, because it's, again, I'm pretty anti new stuff, and I'm fully capable of admitting maybe I'm wrong for that. I'm teachable, you know what I mean? But there's stuff out there already, there's definitely situations where like you'll see a bunch of different clubs come under a new banner, because they were all fucking tight before. And then that, something happened, something changed, and they're like, dude, let's do this together. You know what I mean? You know what? I really can't find an issue with that personally. And obviously I ain't speaking for nobody on the staff here, but stop making new shit. The old shit's cool, man. There's so much fucking history here. You know what I mean? And Road Dirt keeps trying to say something, but his mic's muted. You have to hit the button. You have to hit the button, Pop. Peepaw, you got to unmute the mic. He's mad.
No, so just so you know, my mic has a button on it for mute, and that's where I was muting it with, muting it and unmuting it. Now all of a sudden the app wouldn't recognize the button. I had to go down and do the mute button on the thing. So shut up. Anyway, I'm not stupid. It's just the technology was acting up.
Nobody called you stupid, Peepaw.
Shut up, man. Anyway, I don't even remember what I was going to say now. You got me so damn mad. But shut up, whippersnapper. I'm talking, Junior.
Are you mad because you missed the early bird special at Denny's?
I feel like I'm battling with my child. Anyway, what I was going to say was I think ultimately, though, regardless, if for some reason whatsoever somebody is going to start something new, I think we all hit on it. And I would like to say, yeah, the thing is being teachable, approachable, listening, being involved in the community and taking advice. I think that's at the end of the day, right? Because if not, what's the point? But yeah, now I'm going to hit my mute button.
Okay, now hit it again just to make sure it works. You got to hit the button this time. You can't just look at it.
I can't hear him. All right. What's next on the schedule? All right. So back to the protocol. I think one of the protocols that has been getting violated a lot as of late, and probably one of the protocols that tends to cause the most issues between clubs is when other clubs take members who are out in bad standing. So does anybody want to jump on and kind of just describe that scenario?
I have so many opinions on this, and I'm not going to share them.
Well, let's just pretend that Road Dirt's microphone's on mute. He's talking, but it's like nothing's coming. Is he making his mouth move? I can't hear him.
Maybe he's just fucking with us and moving his mouth, but like he's
That's
not
what I'm
actually
thinking.
speaking. Yeah.
Press the button on your microphone. This is ridiculous. He's over here snapping. I feel bad for anybody who's listening with audio only.
He's like, is this like a clap on, clap off thing? Like, my mic won't work.
Type it in the chat room.
Yeah, type it in the chat room. I'll see if I can translate it for y'all. Okay.
Right.
Well, god damn it there, punk rock. I done said.
Okay,
No,
here's the funny thing,
it.
right? Like, let's take a break from the episode real quick to acknowledge the humor in this. Road Dirt spent his own hard-earned money and like hours of his life the other day trying to figure out how to get all of this equipment to work so he could have a fucking better audio-video experience for this podcast. And now we can't even figure out how to get him off of mute.
It's not working, man.
There it is.
Did it come back? Hey man, seriously, it's I mean, can you see my mute and unmute like in the screen, because it'll say it's unmuted and it's not, so it's definitely because this mic has a built-in sound card, so it gets back and forth between the app. I think it has a hard time switching.
So because NoShame's muting us through the app or through the fucking somebody else is speaking, so.
Well, if he's muting us, then quit fucking with my shit. I'll control my own mic. If you're going to control my mic, then...
Hey, calm down. It's not our fault you're using Cricket wireless Wi-Fi.
God damn!
I know you ain't... Man, fuck off. So out bad. So an example and the problems we're having. So I think the reason that so many people don't want to acknowledge that is the same reason they're not acknowledging protocol. We don't know why. It's because they don't want to acknowledge protocol. Well, I'll give you a couple of reasons. One is because so many people have, again, not followed protocol and abused the out and bad process. So they just pissed off, mad, personal feelings. they put a guy out because whatever, he's a horrible member and he doesn't show up. But nowhere does he really need to be put out in bad, but they put him out in bad anyway. Or somebody just doesn't like someone and they change his status to out and bad, trying to ruin his career in the motorcycle club community. So that's a lot of reasons people don't acknowledge it. But the other reason, I've heard people say things like, we decide who we do and don't want to take. We don't care what they say. We'll decide if they're good or if they're bad. So the scenario that ends up happening is Club A puts a member out in bad standing. Now we know as motorcycle club members, that's hands off. No one should take him into their club, period. For whatever reason, because it's supposed out in bad means you stole, you owe money, you fucked somebody's old lady, you did things that just meant you don't belong here, right? And so now you're out in bad standing and the community shuns you and you don't take you in. But what happens is these other clubs, because I don't know if there's because they're gunning for numbers or because they just don't care, they snatch this cat up. Now you have problems. And like we said, protocol is designed to stop beefs and to stop people from interacting in a violent manner. But a quick way for that to happen, it may not be intentions may not be to be violent, but you taking out bad member is basically one of the biggest signs of disrespect you can show to another club. You're saying fuck them. Then you show up at a party or at a set and you're both there and they start discussing it. It doesn't take long for some hot-headed bikers to start throwing down, but that's the example. We're not supposed to do it. It seems like many clubs are doing it now. I don't know the reason other than probably the same reason that everyone's choosing not to follow protocol, for multiple reasons. But yeah, it happens a lot. I'll let somebody else talk.
Well, so you said that when somebody's put out bad, it meant that they stole, they owe a lot of money, they fucked somebody's old lady, right? But I would assume, I think I can safely assume that there's some out bads being thrown around because this guy hurt my feelings. Or, you know what, he was 2 months late on dues, so I'm gonna fucking throw him out of the club out bad. He owes me money, but I'm gonna neglect to mention the part where, he's got, like, his truck was stolen, his house caught on fire, and he's got all his money going elsewhere, however much money a month in dues, we could let him slide on, but we chose not to. At the end of the day, protocol is what it is. And if somebody's out bad, they should be treated as a leper. They shouldn't be touched by anybody else in the motorcycle club community. But I think that the out bad status has been abused by so many people that now there has to be a little bit of investigative work. Like, hey man, why is he out bad? Well, he's out bad because he fucking missed 3 of my meetings and he didn't come to my wife's birthday party. Is that out bad, bro? You know what I mean? But also at the end of the day, protocol dictates what protocol dictates. So now you're, which one do you go with? Do you go with, well, he was put out for a bullshit reason in a bad way, or protocol is protocol and it's black and white? And is protocol black and white? That's my question.
Okay, so this might get a little bit long-winded. And some people, I don't know everybody's club situation. You actually have clubs that have time periods. That if you quit just for the sake of quitting before you reach that time period, you're considered out bad. Now, I'm not going to discuss whether I agree with that or not. That's each club's specific rules. That's their bylaws. But just for example's sake, you have individual 1 from Club A who quits just because he doesn't like authority, he doesn't like the way things are going, and he's put out bad. And Club B comes to pick him up, and they reach out to Club A and say, hey, we really think this is a solid guy. We really want him. Is there some term of agreement we can come to? And I've seen this done a couple of times to where they'll come up with like a year slick back, no prospect, no anything. And they say, hey, if you can guarantee that, you can have him. And I've seen that work. But then you have example 2, where person is facing certain things in the club he doesn't agree with. He quits. He rips up club patches, which are club property. Everybody knows that. That's no secret. So you destroy the patches because of your fit of rage, and you're put out bad. And then when Club B contacts you about it, and you tell them, and the first words out of their mouth is, well, your out bad's not our out bad. That's where you have a problem with the protocols seeing eye to eye, because I don't care what club you're in. If you destroy that club's patches, then you should have to pay for them. Make it right, because it's club property. I wouldn't expect to be out in good standing if I'm going around destroying club property or not even returning all of it. So I think there's a thing for numbers that's going on. There's so many clubs I could say that I'm not going to, that there's some that were started by taking multiple dudes that were out bad from another club. So it's gotten to a point to where it's just like, everybody's like, fuck you, I'm going to take him if I want to. And then it's like Road Dirt says, that's what leads to problems down the road.
Punk rock. So just when you want one example, and I wanted to hit this before we forget, you were like, if a guy owes, let's say a guy was just was having a hard time in life and he got behind on his dues and, he wasn't a bad brother. He still owes him money, so he's still out bad, right? But usually what will happen in that scenario is a couple phone calls be made and they'll be like, yeah, he wasn't bad, bro. He just got behind on his dues. He couldn't keep up. He owes us $300. And it's like, Mac said, hey man, get the money over this way and make him right so we can take him off that status and you can do whatever you want. So that's not, you're right, punk rock. Sometimes he still owes money and he can still be out bad because he owes money and he shouldn't run around to another club. And that's where, like Mac said, I've seen that happen. He wasn't a bad brother. He wasn't a bad person. He just couldn't keep up at that point in his life and he left the club, but he still owed him money. So that doesn't mean, I'm going to ask you this, punk rock. Do you think he should still be considered out good if he owes another club money?
So I'm asking a lot of questions tonight to play devil's advocate, right? I'm trying something else, right? I'm trying to be like the Bizarro Dave, right? I think some of our younger listeners might not get that reference, and that hurts my feelings. Side note, I was listening to fucking Leonard Skinner yesterday at work, and one of my younger sailors was like, why are we listening to this old-timey music? And I tried everything that I could do to not put this sailor through a fucking window. Anyways, no, I 100% agree. How I've seen some clubs do it. A club that I was a part of that no longer exists. I feel like I could talk about it. How we did it then was, if you left for whatever reason, you left or you were kicked out, but it's not out bad, right? Okay, cool, you owe us money. We're going to give you this out bad. We call it out bad pending. And then we set a date with them. Say, okay, cool. Like, you're leaving or you're getting kicked out. You have, 30, 60, 90 days. You have to, you have this much time to go collect all the club property, anything with our logo on it, anything with trademarked fucking stuff on it. This is how much money you owe for these reasons. And, when we do church, you let me know, or whoever the sergeant is, hey, you let me know when you're ready to come to church. You give this back. We'll present it at church. We'll be over it, right? And that out bad pending gets changed to an out good, because he's returned all the club property. He quit in person, and he showed back up to deliver everything else. And whether it was dues, club property, whatever, he showed back up to deliver that in person. You know what? Okay, it didn't work out with the fucking club. That's all it is it didn't work out. That doesn't make him a bad person. That doesn't make you a bad club. So, we would change their status. Okay, you're from out bad pending to out good. And we'd write him a little note. Hey, this is fucking so-and-so from this club. I am this. As of this date, this member is out good. We'd sign it, leave a cell phone number. We'd give it to him, be like, all right, man, have a great day. Good luck on your fucking endeavors. And, I'll wave at you in the bar if I see you, but like, you kind of, you got to give me some time to get over this, because leaving a club or being kicked out, like, this shit hurts. It is not enjoyable for anybody.
God damn, that was a long fucking answer.
Motherfucker. Oh, I'm sorry. What? You got a fucking bedtime that you got to get ready for? It's fucking, what? Not even 8 o'clock yet. Before you say something, you got to hit your button again, okay, people?
So I think what needs to be taken into account here is the fact that there are three sides to every story. And I'm not the first person to say this, but that there's side A, side B, and then somewhere in the middle of that there's the truth, right? So there's extenuating circumstances in every situation, and every club is going to choose how they deal with those circumstances, right? And it sucks to like have to try and kind of play devil's advocate in this situation, because like I said in the beginning when I brought this topic up, this whole business of taking somebody who is out bad probably causes the most issues in the motorcycle club community today, right? But then, how many times have I been in a situation where I'm dealing with somebody who's potentially going to join the club, right? And we call their former club, and on speakerphone, like everybody can hear it, like, hey, what's this person's status? Oh, they're out good. And then the moment you put a prospect patch on, I'm like, oh no, we're changing their status to out bad. Fuck them. Like how many times does that happen? Like I've seen it happen, personally, but that's not the case all the time. It's sometimes they are legitimate out in bad statuses, but how many times do you go through that same process of running this this thing only to find out that there's some bullshit behind it, right? So I think it's a two-way street. The losing club in this situation, the club that is losing that member, whatever you're going to decide that you're going to put them out bad for, that needs to be something that you're willing to go that extra mile to back up, right? Don't put somebody out bad if it's not something that you're willing to stand on. And at the same time, don't take somebody who's out bad if you're also not willing to stand on their story, right? Because everybody's going to tell you their side, right? When you take that hang around in and you go to make him a prospect, and he's going to tell you his whole sob story of why his out bad status is not legitimate. And when you call that club, they're going to tell you their side of the story, and it's kind of a crapshoot. So are you willing to stand on that for the clubs? Is the losing club willing to stand on that out bad status? Is the gaining club willing to stand on that potential member's story? And what kind of discovery have you gone through in order to come to that conclusion that yes, I'm willing to stand on this, right? And then the other piece is that there's levels in between, right? You could put somebody out and not necessarily say they're in an out bad status. It's you're approached by a situation where it's like, hey, this guy used to be in our club. Our clubs have a good relationship. We don't necessarily enjoy this person's company. You might want to think about that, before going into that situation, because me personally in my club, if one of my brothers is not allowed somewhere, then I'm not going there, or I might go there and bring him on purpose, right? Like I'm not going somewhere where I feel like my brothers are not welcome. But if you're going to take somebody from another club who left and they're not necessarily on good terms, can you really blame that club for not wanting him in their house, right? You can't. Like if I kick somebody out or somebody left my organization, joined another organization, and then they bring him over and now he's wearing these new patches, I'm going to feel some type of way about it. I'll probably go tell him to go get fucked, right? So is that situation worth losing that potential relationship, right? There's so many things that come into play with it, and there's so many like what if scenarios and avenues that you could go down, and who's right and who's wrong, and everybody's always got their story, and really just boiling it down to what is the truth, what's the closest we can get to an accurate truth, is it worth it to stand on that, and what am I doing to make sure my organization doesn't fall into this scenario on either side of the coin, where I'm putting somebody out bad for a bullshit reason, or I'm taking somebody who's out bad and then putting my club in a shitty situation because of that? Is it worth it? And what am I doing to make sure of that?
I wonder too. This just popped up in my mind. No shame. I wonder how many times these decisions we're talking about are made purely by ego of one person who's just in a position of power and who can make that call and just says, fuck you, fuck everybody else. And you know how some people's egos don't allow them to, or they choose not to see the greater picture and how it's going to impact their nation and the set. I wonder how many times these decisions are made by one person who's just too egotistical to think about everybody else.
Probably a lot. And I don't want to imagine that on the gaining side, it probably happens more often. If you're talking about the losing side, then the conversation's more than likely going to happen at a higher level, right? But if you're talking about the gaining side, how easy is it to sweep this under the rug? To just be like, hey, yeah, I know. At whatever level it stops at, like, oh, it's just whatever. And then the rest of the club has no idea. And then all of a sudden you're getting like mean mugged by some guy at a fucking bar, and you have no idea why he's even pissed at you because some shit happened in Timbuktu. And, it's like I'm sure that happens more than we even realize. Well, yeah, so yeah, I think we covered the out bad piece. It's not good. It's not called out good. It's called out bad because it sucks. All right. Well, and then we already kind of talked about this pop-up club thing, but the last thing on our agenda is, why do we think there are so many pop-up clubs coming around?
So there I was, right? I'm just
Sucking a
playing.
dick.
Sucking dicks. Hey man, hey, gas is expensive, bro. All right, just mind your business. No, man, I think it's one of two things. I think one is purely innocent, and I think the other one, I have I feel a certain type of way on the innocent one. I think dudes just see club guys out having a great time, and they got their their clique. They got 4 or 5 dudes that they're always with, and they're like, man, I see what club insert name here is doing. I want to be like that, but I want to be like that with my homies. So they throw a patch on, and they say, okay, we're a traditional MC. And then they go riding bar to bar instead of staggered like they used to, and now they feel some sort of way, right? But they're still malleable, right? You could still mentor these guys, and I've seen it at a new club meeting in San Diego where these guys were, because you don't tell them, not allowed to tell people they can't start a club, right? But they were advised not to. Another club snatched them up, says, hey, you guys really want to be in a fucking club? Yeah. Well, fucking, I'll prospect all of you. Let's go. This is how it goes. This is why you were told it's not a good idea. I'll fucking prospect all of you after, if you guys fucking make it through the hang around phase and all that. And he did. He ended up prospecting all like 9 of these dudes. And luckily they were prospected the right way. And only about 3 of them made it because the other guys just weren't really cut out for this kind of life, even though it wasn't, I'm not going to go there, but it was a certain type of club, but the prospect period was still done correctly. They found the guys who were dedicated and they wanted to be here for the right reasons, and the other guys that just wanted to look cool and go along with like Billy's idea of starting a motorcycle club. Those are the guys that washed out, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with being an independent guy, And I think the less honorable reason is because people don't want to prospect. They see stuff like all that prospect's always running back and forth to the bar, getting beers for patch holders, and he's not sitting down, he's not eating, he's not drinking, or he's, it's always, oh, hey, prospect, fucking, oh, I ain't nobody's bitch, I ain't gonna fucking do that, when they really just can't humble themselves to understand that this isn't, you're not being somebody's bitch while you're doing that, because like if I had you guys in my house right now and we're sitting around my coffee table drinking beers and shit, and I get up to go get another beer, I'm going to be like, hey, you guys want one? Like, I'm going there anyway. I'm going to go bring you a beer because I love and respect you guys. And, I mean, Road Dirt has done that for me. So I've seen him do it. He was walking back up to the bar. He's like, yo, you fat fuck, you want another beer? I bet you do. I was like, yeah, you right, Uncle Road Dirt. I want another beer because I'm a fat fuck. Give me them carbs, baby. It's okay.
How much,
Humility.
you know, the word that keeps popping up into my head, and it has been, I've been thinking about this post today or this podcast today. And as you guys are talking, instant gratification just keeps popping up in my mind. You know, is it, and somewhere, I don't know if it's always been this way or if I've just become the old motherfucker who bitches and complains about young cats or what, but it seems like everybody's about instant gratification nowadays. And I don't know if it's always been that way, but almost everything from pop-up club to not following protocol to all these things, like wanting something for nothing, wanting it now, and everything we've talked about in the ways of doing things what we say the right way, or doing things along the lines of the protocol, it always involves a process, and everybody doesn't make it. But it seems like with the pop-ups, you know, everybody's a president, everybody's a founding member, everybody's fucking an officer, you know, there's no prospecting period. So my question is, am I just missing something, or does instant gratification keep popping up in my head for a reason?
No, that's a great way to put it. And I know punk rock was talking about, like serving the table to earn your spot at the table kind of thing. He just got into this weird road dirt getting in beer stories. But I think one of the things worth differentiating is the difference between a pop-up club and a new club. And I'd like to hear Mac's opinion on this, because you've gone through this process more recently than the rest of us. And like road dirt, I'm not going to tell your story for you, but whatever you're willing to share about the differences and maybe some of your experiences as it pertains to this.
It all started from actually having a relationship with the club that's been around for a very long time. I'm not gonna put numbers, years, and all that out there, but it started with relationships and knowing them, and then getting mentor, getting guidance to. You start off, and yes, it's started off as a support club, and then time goes along. You're everywhere with them. You're starting to go to each other's. You're at each other's houses. You're seeing each other, and one day somebody somewhere gets this idea, and they're like, "Hey, there's some stuff going on with this, and this. Some things might be changing." And so, things change, and they're like, "This is what we want to do." So now they elevate you from support status to another status, and kind of what they did is, instead of having all these different support clubs running around, yes, it's biracial. You just put them under one banner. And then, even though that club is larger and they're still under one banner, you still have your guidance and your support. Everybody remembers where you were before you came to this club. So you're not new, the patch is new. And then you still have your, I'll call it a probation time, and your guidance and mentoring, and then you take the next step. And I think in the community here, you get more respect that way, because they're like, hey, they didn't just go out and slap that on. I remember when they were just this, and this. They've been around. Versus when you have somebody just roll into town one night at a bike night, that like like Punk Rock said, you got 5 friends that are like, man, we're gonna be Wild Hogs Part 2. He said, we're gonna put a diamond on. And here they come. And it's like, I can understand why people take offense to that, because you to do it the correct way, the protocol way, you put in work. And then when somebody just slaps you in the face and their answer is, well, this is what we're gonna do, nobody can tell us. It's like, yeah, hey, fuck you, guy. I don't have anything for him. It's like, I'm willing to extend an olive branch to try to help educate you and teach you. But once it's fuck me, then it's fuck you. I mean, that's just the way it goes. And there's a lot of people that are like, they just don't understand the situation from that point. And I will say that some of it's ignorant. Some people don't know. And those are the ones that you can teach. And then you got the ones that know, and they're just like, well, who's going to stop us? And that's pretty much where it goes with that.
I think when you start going down this road, I used to use the special forces analogy, but somebody in the YouTube comments recently kind of triggered a different analogy in my head to where, you can start down the path of becoming a medical professional, right? And then you can determine throughout the course of your studies which lane is best for you. Some people might go down there with dreams of being a heart surgeon and find out that they don't have steady hands. So maybe they end up, excelling a little more in chemistry and they become an anesthesiologist or whatnot. They might still be a doctor, but they have a different specialty. And I kind of look at clubs in the same way. It would be pretty arrogant and stupid to think like, I feel like I'm a surgeon in my heart, and I think I've read enough books about it and I've seen enough TV shows that had surgeons in there. Do you mind if I cut you open and fix your heart real quick? Like, that's the same kind of like mentality when you're saying like, I'm going to come into this world, already existing world, laid out traditions, foundations, protocols, etc. And I'm just going to say that I'm a thing. I'm going to proclaim myself because I think I know, versus going through that study, your pre-med, your med school, and then your specialty, and then your residency, and all those different phases that are set up to get you in the right place, and that piece that you were talking about, the ignorance versus willful ignorance, I'll call it, because that's how they play it, as, oh, I didn't know, or I feel like this or whatever. It's one of the bigger violations of protocol, but it's also one of the most argued protocols that there is that there are stepping stones to be able to get into this life. And like we've said several times, that's not to say that you can't go hang out with your buddies and do whatever you want to do, but you're specifically trying to force yourself into a world that already exists. And I think when you boil all of the entire conversation down, because we are getting to an hour, so it is time to start wrapping it up. When you boil the whole conversation down, what we come to find out is that protocol can be as simple as being a stand-up man, a stand-up human being, and then things can get a little more complicated as the areas start to gray a little bit. But to make a righteous attempt to follow protocol to the best of your ability is the best way to continue to make sure that the community thrives and continues to grow in a positive way. And when it comes to base protocol, I don't necessarily think any of it needs to change. I think we just need to change how we apply it and start getting back to the true sense and the true nature of it, and applying it with the right mentality and the right intention behind it in order to propel the community forward. So that's my closing piece on it. I'll open it up to everybody else that has anything else to say in closing.
I've got one thing to say in closing for people out there considering starting a club, or they've got guys that they ride with, a group of them. Hey, like Punk Rock said earlier, it's okay for you to all go prospect somewhere together. Good luck.
I would, also like to address people thinking about starting a club. Don't rob yourself of one of the most memorable experiences of your life. I've been, I've prospected before, and it's no secret I'm going through my prospect period now, and I'm building bonds with some outstanding men that I'm going through it with. I'm building bonds with men that hopefully one day I can call my brother, and I wouldn't trade what I'm doing for the fucking world. And one of the things you hear about most is, when I was prospecting, I remember this, da 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 da. Don't rob yourself of that, man. I promise it's not as horrible as you think it is.
Man, I can't even add to any of that. It was so amazing, especially what NoShame said. I'm gonna tap out.
Oh, that was sweet. All right, well, I appreciate everybody joining us today. We've got a number of good episodes lined up for you guys. Somebody who on the staff who's like, just a really great, solid individual, took his time out of his day to put a schedule together and get topics put out and everything put together in the proper fashion. I'm not going to toot anybody's horn or anything, but that's a great individual he is. So
I think that guy's a fucking asshole for talking about himself like that.
he's also an asshole. I never took that away from him. But yeah, appreciate you guys joining us. And until next time, some catchy phrase insert here.